Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 2018 Flinn-Brown application webinar. I'm Emily Rajakovich. I'm joined here at the Flinn Foundation by Nancy Welch, Vice President of the Arizona Center for Civic Leadership. We're both delighted to be hosting all of you from throughout Arizona today. I know we had RSVPs from Flagstaff, Cottonwood, Tucson, Phoenix. So that's just wonderful, and thank you so much for your time today. Our goal is to provide a bit more context on the Flinn-Brown civic leadership experience, offer some tips on submitting a competitive application, and answer your questions at the end of our meeting here today. I'll turn it over to Nancy in a moment, but first I want to offer a few housekeeping items. We are recording this session today. It will be available on our website later next week, excuse me. We've muted all participants, and you're encouraged to submit your questions via the chat feature on our webinar. It's on the right-hand side of your screen. It looks like a little dialog box. You can just go ahead and type your questions in there, and I'll be following along with the chat during our webinar today. So try to leave your first name and your city with your question to provide us a little bit more information about you. We'll get to as many questions as we can today in the time that we have, but we want to keep this conversation going. So if we don't get to your question today, we'll follow up with you by email, and you're always welcome to reach out to us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nancy Welch, and I'll kick it off with the first question. And I want to ask Nancy if she would provide an overview on the Flinn-Brown opportunity and the application process.
Thank you, Emily, and it's great to meet so many of you online here today. I want to just tell you a little bit about Flinn-Brown so that you can get a good sense of where we've been, where we're going, and what makes a great application. Flinn-Brown is unique in Arizona. We work to develop individuals who want to be state-level leaders, whether that's elected, appointed, or employed, and we are part of a long-term network of Arizonans who share an interest in public service and the experience of Flinn-Brown. Flinn-Brown is different from other programs. What makes us unique is our destination focus. We are looking for people to act in the next several years, our long-term network and support, and our focus on policy, politics, and networks at the same time. We're also different because of our Strong Foundations Guide. We produced this to help you make a roadmap for achieving civic leadership. Our network plans events throughout the year. We have an annual convention, and we do many things to make sure that you make as many connections in our network as possible. In short, we are trying to help you become an insider in state government rather than an outsider looking in. Flinn-Brown is for people from all walks of life, all perspectives, who want to make a difference in the state and want to learn more about understanding and working across many perspectives. It is more competitive than ever. We are now, as you know, recruiting for the 2018 cohort, and we are doing this in the spring of 2018 so that we are really providing as much opportunity to be involved in the Flinn-Brown network before the election cycle really heats up. Flinn-Brown starts with an intensive 12-session seminar series. We look at everything from the state budget to the big issues of health, education, and corrections, water, transportation, more. If it's in the news, we really cover it in Flinn-Brown. And we look to issues, not just what's happening today, but what is likely to happen in the future. We know that change, whether it's incremental or monumental, takes policy, politics, and networks. And that's where we really put our effort. After the seminar series, we have a number of other components: long-term support, our Flinn-Brown network. It is really the Flinn-Brown network that is the long-term benefit to being a part of Flinn-Brown. It functions for personal and professional reasons, for decision-making reasons, and it is I think, going to be one of Arizona's great assets in the coming years. The network is an increasingly strong community, and that community helps with connection, with information, with jobs, campaigners, support. It's a very dynamic part of Flinn-Brown. The seminar series is intensive. It features pre-reading. It features a lot of discussion, a significant team project, and you're saying, oh my goodness, that is going to take a lot of my time. Yes, it is a big time commitment. We're very serious about attendance, but we have found that the Fridays and Saturdays that we hold seminars, it makes that intensive experience, but it is short term. You can plan other parts of your life around it. We did Fridays and Saturdays to lessen the time away from your work, but that also increases the stress and the sacrifice from your families, and we understand that very well and appreciate that. We've also found that the information, the seminars build piece by piece so that the shorter time makes a better experience. You'll meet a cross-section of people in Flinn-Brown, and it is important to think not just about your cohort, but about the entire network. So what makes a great application? Showing that you are dedicated to public service is critical to a great application. If you're selected for an interview, you'll be talking to 5 really well-known, really highly sophisticated, practiced people in Arizona. They will want to know about your service. Show that you have a breadth and depth in your field. It isn't enough to say in an essay that we should fund K-12. Show us that you have studied it, that you have a sense of what you want and a sense of how to get it done. You have a destination in mind. Flinn-Brown is not for deciding where and if you are going to serve. We look to people who have a destination and are actively taking steps to get there. You can you can describe your leadership experience and work in specific ways. Detail is great because you are really showing that you are capable and you are a growing potential leader. You don't want to show, you want to show that you are more than good at your job, but please do use examples of leadership from your work. Overall, Flinn-Brown is looking for curiosity, follow through, commitment to service, and a desire to work across perspectives for the state.
Thank you, Nancy. So I want to know what questions are out there from our participants. So again, just type your questions into the chat feature there. We'll follow them along. We'll follow along with those questions. We had a few submitted in advance, so as you think of yours and type them into the chat feature, I'll ask some of our advanced questions now. Nancy, Caitlin in Phoenix and Sarah from Peoria both asked a similar question. They want to know the typical threshold of civic engagement or public service experience needed before applying for the program. You touched a bit on that in talking about a competitive application. Would you want to elaborate a little bit?
Certainly, that is a great question. I can't say that it's so many years of leadership or so many years of civic engagement, or that you must have done X, Y, or Z. What we are looking for is a real leadership experience. If that experience was in college and you're an early career professional, that's just fine. If it was in your children's school, that's just fine. We're looking for substantial experience rather than a length of time. We're also looking for people that have had perhaps a variety of public service and a variety of civic engagement. And over everything, it is really the commitment to public service and taking your experience to the state level that really matters.
Thank you, Nancy. We had a question come in our chat room. Anne would like to hear about an example of one of the class projects.
Thank you, Anne. That is a great question because it does take a lot of Flinn-Brown time. Right now, we have groups working on their projects. It is a legislative proposal about a topic that is timely. We are looking for innovation, but we're also looking for how feasible is this project in today's environment? So remember I talked about policy, politics, and networks. The challenge is to find an innovation in an area that is of interest to your group, create a legislative proposal, and show that you've gone through the steps, the policy steps, the network steps, the political steps to understand it and make it successful. For example, we have a couple of groups right now looking at what would happen and how could Arizona go to year-round school. Is that a way to provide additional community service opportunities through our schools? We have a group working on a tax credit problem. We have a group working on a water problem right now. So it's a project that is substantial and feasible. And the projects themselves are then judged by a committee of 3 people from across many perspectives, but they all have really significant legislative experience, so that they are giving critiques and feedback to show where the ideas could have been better and that sort of thing.
Thank you. So continue to submit your questions in the chat room. We're happy to answer those now. In the meantime, Nancy, can you talk a little bit more about what makes an application really stand out to the selection committee? You talked about highlighting your expertise on a particular policy area. In the number of fellows that we have, almost 300 in the network now, what in your experience has really helped applications stand out?
There are a couple of things. One is show that you are truly curious about the state, that you want to learn about what makes Arizona tick. Arizona is a very interesting place, as you know. Show us that you want to know more about it. Show us that you have a real depth in your thinking and in your experience. Show us that you have a real destination in mind. And in your work, show us the detail. You think about, you're telling someone you're driving a truck, but what makes a great application is that even in a short space that you're driving a red truck from 1942 that you've owned for years. Show us that detail, because that shows your depth of experience. So those are some of the things that make a good application.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have a couple more questions in our chat room here. I'll just read them for you, Nancy. As an elected official, do your seminars provide expertise and support in running for state-level elections?
We have not done specific campaign training or campaign development, but what we have done is use the network, and the network both within Flinn-Brown and the network throughout the community to connect you to the kinds of services and support and assistance that will help you develop a strong campaign. Within our network, we have people who are political consultants, who are current and former candidates. We have people who have helped other candidates. So this is a place to really use the network.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question from the chat room. How does the Civic Leadership Program fit within the mission of the Flinn Foundation? Good question.
The Flinn Foundation is in business, really, to benefit future generations of Arizonans. There is no better way than to make sure that our state level institutions, our agencies, whether elected, appointed, employed, have the people they need to have really creative, innovative solutions to the long-term problems that we have. So this program is integral to Flynn's mission, and the Flinn Foundation over its decades has always had really almost an unspoken but very visible commitment to leadership development, and Flinn-Brown is just another part of that devotion.
A question that was submitted in advance comes from a potential applicant whose plan is to run for office within the next few cycles. and they wanted to know what should they be working on in the meantime. How should they discuss their plans in the application? What advice would you have for them?
That is also a great question. Running for office, as everyone understands, is not an easy thing. We also know that people who have been significant state leaders have often had many kinds of experiences before and after they run for office. So if you're thinking about running for office, please tell us that in the application, but also make it clear that you're thinking about the steps that need to be done to make you a successful candidate. So if you are not involved in a political party, you might want to consider that. But as you think about the steps to run, what can you be doing now to further your network? Is there a board or commission that is a great place for you? What will help you broaden your base, broaden your knowledge to be a successful candidate? So really think about all of state level leadership as being a lot of positions over time, and Flinn-Brown can help you decide how to do what's next for you and then to move on to your ultimate goals.
Okay, Nancy, this next one, this is an excellent question. Do you have to be considering running for office to apply for Flinn-Brown, or is it okay to be considering an appointed position or other state agency work?
You do not have to be running for office. This is always an important question. That is difficult, it's important, it's vital, but it is not the only thing that we count. It's not our only goal. We want people to be policy advisors, we want them to be board and commission members, we want them to be agency executives. We want people to help run statewide organizations that work on public policy. So please don't think that you have to run for office.
Great question, thanks for asking that. The next one I was hoping to address is you talk about the Flinn-Brown network and the power of the network to support fellows. Can you talk about expectations of fellows after the seminar series? You alluded to that in your opening, but talk a little bit more about what's expected of fellows.
Certainly. We are selecting fellows to be long-term members and participants in the network. Flinn-Brown is not a program that you ever leave. You don't graduate from Flinn-Brown. You are once a fellow, always a fellow is the way we describe it. And we expect people to remain active in our network by coming to events, by connecting with others, by being a great collaborator with others. And we look to people to help build the strength of relationships over time.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's get into the seminar series a little bit. Can you describe what a typical Flinn-Brown session looks like?
A typical Flinn-Brown session, they run from 7:30 for breakfast to about 5 o'clock on Fridays and about 4 o'clock on Saturdays, and we often go out for happy hour on Fridays. The first session in a seminar day is about facts and figures. It's about the agency that is involved in that issue. It's about just really the details, the facts and figures is the best way to put it, of that issue. We always have a Civic Insights guest. This is a really well-known leader in Arizona, and it's a very informal conversational interview so that you get to know that leader. And then much of the afternoon is about perspectives on that issue and activities for you to share with colleagues and to really delve into something. It's whether it's a case study or a series of questions, it's often interactive, as is all of our work together. We end the day with what we call R&R, which is respond and reflect. And this gives you a chance to really think about what you've heard, what you think, what others think, and process what you're experiencing. So that's how a day goes.
Thank you. Well, we'll do a last call for questions here in our chat. If anyone has any final burning questions here, any last words of encouragement or advice that you would give potential applicants?
I really encourage all of you to apply, and I look forward to reading your applications. You are writing to people who want you to be successful, and you are writing to people who share an interest in public service, an interest in policy, a deep love of Arizona. So really showing those things will help you be successful.
Well, thank you to everybody for joining us today. Nancy and I continue to be available. Our contact information is on our website, azcivicleadership.org. I hope you'll continue to reach out to us with your questions and that you found this afternoon helpful. Thank you so much for being with us. Mhm.